Tonight we are doing Ina Garten's viral sensation brownie pudding. I've spent the last 3 days investigating, researching, baking, and thinking about this. I wrote notes and did all kinds of work, so we're gonna get started right away. I always start with a fit check, and tonight is no different. I've got my work clothes on, I have clogs on, I wear short fingernails, no nail polish, no jewelry. Trying not to touch my glasses, minimal makeup, and my hair is pulled back. We pay attention to food sanitation, it's a priority, but this brownie tonight is just for us. I put on my clean apron. Tonight we are doing the brownie pudding from Ina Garten, and I put the recipe on my link tree, and on the internet it looks like this. So I took the recipe, I converted it to grams, and this is what it looks like. I have notes, which are quite extensive this week. I basically thought of every comparison and everything that I could think of to help give context to this brownie pudding. Because it's actually a very technical recipe that I think Ina did and made it sound like it's fun, but it actually needs to be dialed in. And I watched the video and I analyzed the baker's percentage, which is on the recipe. For those of you who don't know, my name is Kathleen. I am a certified executive pastry chef. I teach on TikTok, Substack, and on YouTube. This recipe, actually, she made a video of it in it's like 17 years ago, and it's just kind of come back around on social media and become popular again, and everyone's trying to make it. And so you can not only see successes, but you can see all the fails. So what I did is I poured over all the recipes. What problems did people have? What questions did they have? What did they like? What did they not like about it? And you sort of started to see some themes. And then I got great feedback from all of my viewers in a comment section on a video. And so I have a lot of information. But for reference, I am going to compare this recipe so that you can kind of framework what it is between two different recipes that I have done as lecture demos that are on my YouTube page. The Outrageous Brownie by Ina Garten, which won my brownie experiment extravaganza last year. I made maybe 30 brownies and it got into the top 6 and then it was #1. And so that was really fun because I've been doing it for 30 years. I absolutely love that recipe. And then the chocolate lava cake, which is the kind of cake where when you turn it out of your souffle cup and you cut into it with your spoon or your fork, it flows. So compare a brownie that's got a shiny, crinkly crust that firms up that you can pick up and eat to a lava cake, which you can cut into and it flows. We're somewhere in the middle. We are like a cocoa-based baked custard dessert. That is what this brownie pudding is. And in order to get that exact texture, not grainy, not gritty, but very smooth and glossy and shiny, we need to control a few things. And it always comes down to thinking like our ingredients. You can't swap one ingredient for another that has nothing to do with it, whose ingredient functions do not overlap, and you need to consider time, temperature, and moisture. And I always say it's important, but anytime we are talking about egg foam, which is what we'll be making tonight, whole egg with sucrose whipped until it creates this viscous syrup that holds air, because there are no leaveners in here like baking powder or baking soda, none. So all of our leavening comes from the air in the egg foam. And then we are going to be adding some of the dries, a little flavoring, and at the end you fold in warm, cooled, melted butter. The reason I mentioned time, temperature, and moisture is because in order to get a good egg foam, your ingredients, your egg has to be a good room temperature. And if it's not, you need to warm up your bowl. You need to get enough air into your egg foam long enough that it holds the air while you add all the other ingredients, and especially when you add the melted butter, because if you add melted butter and it's too hot, it's just gonna deflate. So we're talking time. It takes a very long time to make what is called a ribbon egg. It doesn't take 3 minutes, and you don't do it on high, you do it on medium to a little medium high for 5 to 10 minutes. Having a lot of patience. So then we have time, temperature, moisture on the egg foam, and we then want to emulsify what we've started with the fat, which is our butter. And if those two things are very, very different, if the butter is really, really cold or the butter is really, really hot, these two things are gonna go like that, because emulsification is getting things to go together that normally don't want to. So our goal is to create a nice egg foam and then to emulsify in the other ingredients so that we get a nice, smooth, emulsified batter that goes into a typically cooler oven in a water bath. And along the way, you'll find that there are a lot of details and a lot of ideas and concepts that add up to a good finished product. So when I say I'm surprised that a brownie like this, a dessert, because it's really not a brownie, not like an American brownie, went viral, I know it's because it's gooey and ooey and it's really cool. People take their spoon and scrape it across and there's a big crunch of the crust, all of which we'll get to, and that is very exciting. But what's fascinating to me is it is not an easy concept. It is a very sophisticated French pastry approach that, when broken down, will make sense. And so when you approach this recipe, when you want to make it, you need to think about every single step and paying attention to every single detail, because if you miss one detail, you won't end up with anything good. I have noticed that the way that people define baked and delicious is variable. Some people really liked it when it was runny, it didn't bother them, and other people liked it when it was very overcooked. Some people thought it was too sweet, some people didn't think it had enough salt. So there's a lot of opinions, and whatever you think is good in the end is good. But what I like to do is give you all the information that I can so that you can take it with you and take it or leave it. And that's what I offer. I offer, we take what we need and we leave what we don't, and hopefully everyone will come up with something that's really, really delicious. So I always start with the ingredients and getting started. We're gonna start with the egg foam. And the egg foam, I've already sanitized my countertop. So for those of you who are joining me for the first time, welcome. I love showing people how to think like an ingredient, think about treating the ingredients for what lives inside of them. An ingredient isn't just about what we think it is. It's truly about what lives inside the ingredient: water, fat, proteins, things like that, emulsifiers. And the ingredient is going to do what it wants to do. You can't just do whatever you want. So if you think you're going to use cold eggs for this recipe, I warn you, it will not work. Here are my ingredients, and I always scale them out. And before I do that, I make labels. And on my labels, I put the amount of the scaling. This is sucrose at 400 grams. And what recipe it's for. That way, when I collect them, I can look at this physical representation of my recipe and stay organized, which is what I'm all about. So the recipe is on my link tree. It looks like this, and it's in grams. This is our standard recipe. And the first thing we have is 227 grams of butter. I always use unsalted in my bake shop just to avoid confusion, and I like to control the amount of salt. If you like salty stuff, I think using salted butter for this would be fine, but I'm using unsalted. That's my baking go-to. And then I have egg. These are whole eggs where I crack them all and I stir them together and scale them out. And I have 222 grams of eggs. And I'll get to more details about the eggs because the quantity and size of eggs in this recipe and in the explanation that Ina gave plays a huge part in the success or failure of this recipe. And then we have 400 grams of sucrose, which is table sugar. It's just a baseline way of describing sugar because there are so many in the bake shop. We just like to alleviate confusion. And then I have cocoa powder, 64 grams of cocoa powder and 63 grams of all-purpose flour. So these are about the same amount. And they are the same percentage. 100% flour is our baker's percentage, and this is about 100% of cocoa powder. It's just interesting. And then I have a vanilla bean, a whole vanilla bean I'm going to split and take the seeds out. 13 grams of framboise, or you can use Grand Marnier. Both orange and that raspberry flavor go well with the chocolate. You can leave it out, of course. Using alcohol in this way dissipates during baking. So what we're gonna do is start with the egg foam. Like I said, this recipe, very few ingredients. Really, there's 7 with the vanilla bean, but 6. Very basic ingredients. And when I was doing the brownie experiment extravaganza, I also noticed that brownies are very simple, but they're so different in the way they're made and how they end up. So that's fascinating. This is definitely falls within that simplicity and yet complex. But what you will notice is missing is melted chocolate. Chocolate of any kind, because in a brownie, when you use melted chocolate and it re-solidifies, that is the chocolate fat matrix, which are like chocolate crystals that re-solidify and harden up. When they re-solidify and harden up, you get something that you can pick up and you can chew. That is a different structure entirely than an egg foam. This egg foam is meant to be aerated to give it lift and then cooked so low and slow that the egg proteins, which when they are just like in their natural state are all like this, kind of like squiggled up, as you do your egg foam, they denature, which means they unfurl. And then once they start to develop connections, they start sticking to each other sort of like this, and they form the ability for the viscous sugar liquid that forms around it to hold bubbles. So what we want to do is create a lot of bubbles that are all the same size. We don't want some bubbles that are big and some that are small. And the way that we're going to do that, and we have lots of things that we can work with, time, temperature, and moisture. I'm going to take the labels off of here, which I put over here just to make sure. I can always double check my work. The first thing we know is that the eggs are room temperature. If you think about your muscles being protein, if you were to stretch or do exercises before warming up your muscles, you might tear them and you won't be as flexible. Just like if you try to do the splits at the beginning of working out, you won't be able to, but by the end, you might be able to touch your toes. The proteins that live in eggs are no different. Now, typically, I like to use a whip attachment to make a ribbon egg, an egg foam. But because Ina used a paddle, I'm going to use the paddle, and I only mention it because you can use a whip, and that's typically how an egg foam is made, like if you're making a meringue. So an egg foam is something that you make when you're making a simple meringue, an Italian meringue. Many things are egg foams, and if you think about an egg foam going into a madeleine, a genoise, a pavlova, sponge cake, anytime you're adding air to the eggs and then adding other ingredients, that is an egg foam. It can be an egg foam cake, it can be an egg foam meringue, a dessert, etc. This is an uncooked egg foam. It's not like a pata bomb. You add hot sugar to the yolks as they're whipping. That is more of a cooked egg foam. This is all raw. That's why we need to bake it afterwards. And everything that I do slowly and I take my time. So the first thing to mention is I'm not going to just dump all of the sucrose into the egg. I want to loosen up those proteins a little bit. If you've ever noticed, I call it ploop, P-L-O-O-P, plooping. It's when you pick up egg whites and things and they all stick together. Those are the proteins. They are all stuck together. So you want to start denaturing them a little bit, and these are whole eggs. You've got your egg white, which has a lot of protein and water, and then your egg yolk, which has miraculous, naturally occurring lecithin, which is an emulsifier. That helps bring all these things together. The same emulsifiers live in our butter, and so does water, and so do proteins. So butter and eggs aren't so different, they just look different. So I've started these. This is on a medium, and I'm going to add 1/3 of the sucrose. And this is on medium, and the reason I do that is because if you whip everything on high, you will get there faster, but you will also build unstable bubbles. And we want to build stable ones, because if you have a bunch of big ones and little ones kind of all interspersed and a big one pops, then you have more deflation. It has a bigger impact. So we want them all to be the same size so that if one pops, not a big deal. So when we build these air bubbles, the sucrose is being, I'm going to add the next 1/3. This sucrose is starting to dissolve in the water that lives in the egg, mostly in the egg white. As it dissolves, it's creating a syrup. Dissolving into the water, sugar is making a syrup, and the syrup is more viscous than just water. It's thick. So as these proteins create structure for the syrup to sort of gather around, that's where the air can get shoved in and bubbles are created. That is the structure we need to hold the bubbles. So by going on medium, it's going to take longer. By using room temperature eggs, it's going to go faster. If you use cold eggs, it's going to take forever. And I can feel And someone asked me the other day, how do you know if it's a good room temperature? And my answer is, you can feel it. Okay, so I don't know a temperature. Everyone's kitchen's a different temperature. Some people live in hot climates and I live in a cold climate. So this is really cold, and I don't want it to be cold because I would like to help loosen up all of the proteins in this bowl. And so I am going to use my torch in a moment, but meanwhile, I'm gonna get started on my butter. I am going to melt the butter in the microwave, but I am not going to bang it. I don't wanna cook it so hard if you do it on a stove top or however you melt your butter. You don't want to like turn it on high and walk away and whatever. First of all, that evaporates water. And second of all, you just want to be gentle. We're just trying to break the emulsion and get the chunks out, because when we add it, we don't want it to be hot or cold. We want it to just be liquid fat. And it's going to have the water and all the other things in it, and we need it to emulsify. So we don't want to create problems by having variation in temperature. Emulsification is about bringing temperature differences closer together and bringing things that don't like each other to be friends. So I'm going to put this in at 30 seconds to start and then take a look at it. I will show you what it looks like in the bowl. I'm going to turn it down just so you can kind of see. So what you can see are some sugar granules around the edge. Can you see those? So what I want to do first is to turn off my mixer and go ahead and use the paddle to just scrape these in. And you can hear the sugar granules, okay? And we will take notice. All we're doing is noticing things. And so I will put this back on medium. And you can tell already, compared to the way the egg looked in my deli cup to how it looks now, it's getting lighter and a little bit thicker, and it's growing in volume. Show you what the butter looks like. And one of the reasons I know exactly how long it's going to take, because it's going to take a while for the egg, is because I've made it twice in the last 2 days. So here is the butter. You can tell that there are still chunks in the butter. So I'm not going to do 30 seconds. I'm going to do 15. Sometimes when you melt chocolate and butter, if you get almost all the way there and there's just a little bit that's not melted, you just leave it, it'll continue to melt. You got a little carryover cooking. In order to keep my butter from re-solidifying or getting cold on the bottom, I'm going to use a trivet. This is an insulator. We talk about insulation, we are going to be talking about a water bath and about insulating our brownie pudding from heat so that things cook more slowly. This is an insulator between a really cold countertop and my butter. So I'm always going to use this because the bottom of my butter is so temperature sensitive that it could harden up on the bottom and then the top is liquid. And you'll also notice that when you melt butter, when you break that emulsion of the proteins, the water, the solids, and the fat, you can see all those things in there. The white whey protein, the water you can see floating around that's not emulsified with the fat anymore. And so if you were to let it re-solidify, you would notice that that water would sort of float to the top. So we want to keep it melted. So I still see a couple little pieces that are solid, so I'm going to give it 11 seconds. And another trick I have is I often leave the butter in the microwave because it stays warm in there as long as it's off. First I'm going to warm this up and then I'll move on to the next stage. You can use a hot towel, you can use a lot of things to warm up your bowl. But we're not trying to cook the eggs, we're just trying to knock the heat off of this cold metal bowl so that the inside can get nice and warm and loosen up a bit. So you don't have to do a lot, and you can use a heat gun, but I do not recommend blow dryers. They blow around too much dust. You can usually notice that the egg is starting to loosen up around the edge. That's where you'll see things loosen up. If it's butter, you'll see it soften up. But you don't want to melt anything or cook it. You just want to warm it up. With heat distribution, even though, ooh, it's warm. Even though this is moving around and you think, oh, I warmed it up, just the act of moving around the egg and the fact that inside is cold egg is redistributing that temperature. So eventually it will make this bowl cold again. So I will keep an eye on and continue to assess the condition of the egg foam, the temperature of the bowl, and then I'll keep things moving. A few things to decide, okay? One of the things that Ina did is she used a ceramic dish that was about 2 quarts, and it was not even 2 inches tall, and it was about 9 by 13. So this is quite large. I made one today in a metal pan. I've tried a bunch of different types of pans. I used a porcelain or ceramic one. I used the metal. I am going to be using metal tonight, but the one I used was not a 9 by 12. It was like 10 by 13. So it ended up really thin, and I'll show it to you later, which is fine. I still got a good baseline of information. But what I decided to do tonight, and what the takeaway that I want you to hear, is that yes, Ina made this batch, this one batch, in the 100% standard recipe form, and she put it into her ceramic pan, into her oven at her temperature, and she set the timer for 1 hour. But what we need to be looking at is how thick is the batter, what kind of product are we using? Is it ceramic, is it metal, is it glass, and how is that going to affect the bake? Because as I always say, the timer does not tell us when things are done, it just reminds us that something's in the oven. So while it makes sense that it'd be great to put the pan into the oven and pull it out in an hour and it's done, you are going to have to look at signs of doneness, the thickness of your batter, the type of pan that you're using, and you're going to have to adjust how long it bakes, and you're going to have to look for signs of doneness, because texture is a sign of doneness, not time, texture. And I'll show you how to look for the texture when it's getting done. So what I've decided to do, because I used a larger pan and it was too thin, so what I decided to do is an 8 by 8 pan. This is my brownie pan, aluminum, heavy gauge, okay? This is a roasting pan. You can use any larger pan you want, whether it's aluminum or another cake pan, anything that is larger. But what I would like you to look out for is that the pan that you're putting your batter in should be smaller than this pan. You do not want to be shoving in a pan into another pan they're touching, the walls are touching, it's really close in size, and you can barely get the water to go. That is not enough to insulate and cook properly. Now you might be fine and whatever, I'm telling you best practices, and then you can do whatever works for the equipment you have, because ideally, I would have a pan, this one, just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to put this off to the side. I don't need it until I'm ready to put the batter into the pan and then into the oven, but I'm going to show you what's going on in the bowl. I'm going to turn it down so you can see. So this is obviously gaining quite a bit in volume. It's getting much paler, and around the edges you can still see a tiny bit of granulation, but I'm going to show you what it sounds like and what it looks like. And you can see it running off the paddle. So it's very runny. You can still hear the granules of sucrose. And honestly, I don't even follow time, so I don't know how long it's been. Okay, so I'm gonna put it back on medium. So just by scraping it, I'm helping it along. I'm getting anything that's on the edge and helping move it through. That's where we are. And it still feels a little cold. I might warm it up once more. And it's not just to warm it up to help with the air foam, the egg foam. It's to help because I want this to be close to the butter. So I'm not just thinking of things separately. I'm thinking of how they're going to come together down the road. I'll warm it up one more time. It's best to have your torch hot and then just do it for a briefer amount of time and have it on low and go for a long time. So that's going to continue. Now for this, all you need to do is take some room temperature, very soft butter and do a very thin, light coating of butter using a clean pastry brush and get the sides. Once this is done, then we're ready to move to the next task. Because you're scooping this out, it's not a cut and slice, it's not a turn it out type of dessert. You don't need to be as worried about the corners and the edges, but I still like everything to be as even and clean as possible. So I do like to get into the edges. So these kinds of recipes I actually enjoy when things take a minute. They're a moment in the kitchen to kind of relax. I would not walk away from your egg foam. You want to stay nearby. There we go. So I have a nice even coating, and if I'm missing any spots or I notice any thick areas, not a big deal, but we want to make sure that it's nice and even. This will go over here. And one trick I've long learned through the years is that if you put your pan in, fill it with your batter, get it in the oven, and then fill the exterior pan with the extra hot water, this will be less likely to float. If you fill this pan with water and then put your pan down, this is likely to float. And the other thing is, it's very dangerous, especially if you're using boiling water, to put it in and carry it over like that. So you will see that I will be putting the pan into the oven and then pouring very hot water into this area. I'm going to do it very carefully so I don't hurt myself, and also we don't want to slosh or splash into the brownie, obviously. So when you're making an egg foam cake like this with a ribbon egg, you want to add the flavoring second, and then the dries, and then last your fat. So the flavorings for this is a framboise and a vanilla bean. When it comes time, I will take this vanilla bean, we will slice this vanilla bean this way, and then scrape out with the back of the knife the seeds. Those seeds will go into our mixture, and then the remainder I store in sugar to make vanilla sugar. It'll be usable if I wanted to steep it in something or use it for one more use. Vanilla beans are good for more than one single use, and so keep that in mind, because we all know they're very, very expensive. If I were scaling this recipe in advance to be organized, I would not scale the alcohol in advance because it will evaporate. So in this recipe, I said we have no chemical leaveners, no baking soda, no baking powder, but we do have cocoa powder, and I use Dutched, which has a better flavor and it's got a beautiful color. And then we have our all-purpose flour. Now, a lot of recipes call for cake flour and things like that when you're trying to be delicate. But with this recipe, we have to toggle and sort of balance delicacy and low protein like a cake flour with a little bit of strength and structure. Because the only structure we have is this egg foam. And these two things, our cocoa powder and our flour, are going to give us a little bit of drying. This is a dryer. Cocoa powder is going to absorb a little bit of moisture to help stabilize our batter. And then just a little bit of gluten, which isn't really going to be developed in the bowl because we're not going to be beating it quite a bit. It's going to go in and just get mixed until combined. But by its very nature, at 11.7% protein, it's going to give us a little bit of structure. Because the exterior of this pudding is where we're going to test it for doneness. And then the inside is not going to be runny or flowy, but it's going to be basically kind of unset. So these two things need to be sifted. I'm going to show you real quickly what's going on in the bowl. So you can see that it's getting a little bit lighter in color, a little bit lighter and bigger. Now, when we talk about a ribbon egg, what that means is how long does the mixture stay on the surface of the mixture. So when I do this, that is not a ribbon egg because of how quickly it's dissipating. It's too quick. And one little trick we can use is if you make a figure 8, by the time you get to the other side, it should still be there. And so I know from practice that that is not long enough. And it's going to go back in. So yes, it runs, but it also should be stable enough to stand on top. If you go too long with a ribbon egg, you will dry out the eggs and you will make them so that they're no longer shiny, no longer flexible, and it needs to remain flexible so that when it goes in the oven and all the moisture that is going to create lift is gone because you've beaten it off in here and it's gotten too dry, then you aren't going to have a lovely expansion. So we need to preserve the bubbles, we need to preserve the flexibility of the eggs, we need to make it so that all of these factors come together, otherwise we won't have a perfectly delicious finished product. So I'm going to sift these two things together onto a parchment. Cocoa powder is so messy. It's my nemesis, and I am wearing white. This is going to go onto a parchment so I can pick it up later. And typically, you will see that cocoa powder has these lumps. So I am going to use a spatula to push them through. I don't want any lumps because we aren't going to be mixing it long. There's no chance for those lumps to work themselves out. And emulsification, by its nature, is something that's very smooth and combined and glossy and not grainy or gritty. All right, so the reason that I use parchment also is so that later when I go to pick it up, it's easy. I can control on and off putting it into the bowl. It's still a little cold. I feel like I should do one more glass. I will. And again, if you want, if you make this more than once, I recommend you try doing it with a whip attachment. I think it's a game changer. Now I am going to get the butter out of the microwave. If you live somewhere warm, you can take the butter out whenever you want. But because it is naturally cold here, I know that the room temperature is going to make it firmer. So now that I have all of my ingredients, I'm going to take the labels and just put them off to the side. And ooh, the bowl is nice. Okay, so this is good. So I'm going to turn it down just a little bit as a babysitter, and I'm going to go in my kitchen and I want to check the oven. I'm using very hot water, so I'm going to turn this back on. I've decided that I want my oven to be a little hotter, and there are many people who commented and gave me some advice, and I watched the original Fishes and Loaves. I would like the temperature of my oven to be closer to 340 degrees than it is to 325. I think 325 is too low, especially if you're using a water bath and you're not using super hot water, because it takes a very long time for that water to come up to temp. The top then got so thick and crusty and the interior didn't bake. So I'm going with a little bit higher temperature, not convection, because we don't want that fan-forced air to dry out the top of the brownie pudding. All right, so we're about 350, so what I'm gonna do is turn my oven down just a little bit, which I knew I would have to. But I also think about the fact that I'm going to be opening that oven and pouring water in there, and that temperature is gonna come way down, and my oven doesn't regenerate very quickly. So these are all little things that I think about and little refinements that you can think about. Okay. So I think we should check and see if we have a ribbon egg. Okay, so this is how we do it. I'm gonna try to just watch the bowl, not the camera. As you can still hear a little of the sucrose. It's gritty, but I am going to make a figure 8. And it's disappearing pretty quickly, so I'm going to keep going. And it's still glossy and shiny. You can even see how it just made a bubble. Just that is the viscous liquid creating a syrup. I think I'm going to use my cleaver to get the seeds out of here. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get the butter. It's nice and melty. Can you see this? This is what happens with butter. If I were to stick this in the refrigerator, it would be solids, which are your proteins, and then your fat, and there'd be water, either on the edges or on top. That's fascinating. So I'm gonna put it over here, try to keep it a little bit warm. And once this gets to a good ribbon stage, then I'm going to add these first. They're dry, it's not gonna affect much. And then on low to medium, I'm going to add the liqueur. After that happens, I'm not going to wait very long. I'm going to add the dries, and I'm going to mix until just combined. In fact, you really could and should fold. A lot of times I'll take a recipe and then I'll give it the treatment and I'll just redo it the way that I was taught, the way that makes sense to me, that aligns with all of the methods. But because Ina did it this way, I'm trying to stick true to how she showed it on her video so that if you're doing it at home, we get a similar result. However, I would fold in not only the flavoring, but the dries very gently in thirds in a larger, shallow bowl, like I often do in my folding videos. And I would mix in the butter in a drizzle, very slowly in a nice folding motion, just until it's emulsified and together, and then I would pan it and get it in the oven right away. We're gonna use this, and I'm gonna show you how to keep it moving and be gentle at the same time. So I will show you with the camera next time when we get to when it's at the right amount. And we're getting close. I used to think that it had to stay on top for, let's say, 4 to 5 seconds, and I would say that's still a good guess. When I first thought I was going to be doing this demo with the recipe, and I watched it and she said exactly 1 hour in the oven, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to get this in the oven immediately so that we have enough time in our 2-hour time frame to do the demo lecture on Wednesday. But what I'm going to do is, because I do not have this recipe dialed in, what is going into my 8-inch square pan is going to be an amount that I determine. And so there's going to be leftover. And I did this the other day. You can put that leftover into ramekins, put it into a smaller pan. You can put the remainder batter, and in fact the entire recipe, into smaller pans. I am freeing you up to know that whatever pan you use, you are going to be in charge. The trick is you don't want it to be deeper than probably around 1 inch. And that is going to give you the control. It's not the size of the pan, it's how deep the batter is. Even if you have a smaller pan, you can still do the same thing. Put it into a larger pan with a water bath, just like you would if you made creme brulee, which is also like a custard that you bake. So it's a stirred custard, it's a little bit different, stirred and cooked, but they all live in the same family. So this is porcelain, and it's more like ceramic. And this is what Ina used. And it's beautiful, but this is very deep and it's small. If you use something like this, you only want to fill it up about 1 inch and leave it. And this is a really great conductor of heat. It gives you a nice even bake and a really good heat transfer. But a lot of you have glass pans, and I don't keep glass pans around because they're not used in a commercial kitchen. They're very breakable, obviously, and dangerous, and just always going to get broken. So if you use glass, what you should know is you're going to have a very slow uptake on the heat, and then as it gets done, it's gonna go really fast. It builds momentum. So if you use glass, you need to make an adjustment, and that adjustment is just to observe and to respond, just like you would with any of these other decisions. And then finally, I'm using metal. Ina did not use metal. Metal is going to be the best, fastest heat transfer, but if you're using a water bath, the right temperature in your oven, you've got the right depth of batter, and you are washing it and looking for signs of doneness, you will dial in your brownie pudding just perfectly. So you are free to use any of those, but the whole thing that I do is to teach you what you need to know so that you can decide what information you want to use and what information you'd like to ignore. It's completely up to you. But I think an informed decision is way more interesting than just following rules or a recipe without any thought, because you are not in control. And when things go wrong, you will literally have no clue why. So it's really good to be an observer of your own work and to be able to make decisions as you go. All right, so this is getting a little more viscous, a little thicker. Let's take a look. So you can see right away that it's lighter in color, still very shiny. That shininess is important because that means we haven't dried it out. So let's see if we, and this is like doing two things at once. Okay, here we go. All right, so I still think this needs just a little bit of time, but we are very close. I'll do a figure 8. It's staying. You know what? I'm very close. Let's put this back on, and I'm gonna turn it on. We're gonna give it just a couple more minutes, and then we'll be ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and do my vanilla bean now. This is my cleaver. I love my cleaver. So I'm going to slice this in half. Doesn't matter what knife you use. Inside the vanilla bean, is where the seeds live. All of those little seeds is the vanilla. It's the vanilla flavor. I'm gonna do the vanilla first. I'm gonna use the back of my knife to scrape out the vanilla bean seeds. I'm gonna turn this off a little bit. So use the back of your knife. Again, this will be usable for another project. Lots of seeds still in here. If you use the sharp side, what ends up happening is you end up kind of scraping out a lot of the fiber. All right, so this is going to go over here. Either use it right away or I can let it dry out and add it to my reserved sugar for my vanilla sugar. I'm going to take the spatula that I'm going to be using because I'm thinking about not losing any of these vanilla bean seeds. All of them should go on here. And then on low, we are going to add this is the flour and the cocoa powder, and I'm going to add it all at once but slowly. On low. Once I get it in, I'm going to stop and make sure that things are mixing. I'm going to show you what it looks like. So you can see the cocoa powder is kind of sitting on top. What I'm going to do is take this off and I'm going to help it out because this is much more gentle. Look how fluffy. You see that? You can see the air in there, and I don't want to deflate that. And if I were to keep mixing it, that is very rough. And this kind of helps get it going without being overly rough on the mixture. Before I add the fat, I'm going to keep moving on the mixer on low. And this is it's warm. It's not hot, it's not cold, and it's very gently, it's been melted, so it's good to go. I'm going to keep it on this low speed, and I'm just going to slowly add the butter, not too slow. I'm going to go ahead and show you what it's looking like inside while I add the butter. There's all the butter. All right, so this is what it looks like. And again, instead of keeping going, you can see that there are parts on the edge of the bowl, and we want to help it along without continuing to over. You can even see that? That is where some of the unemulsified batter is. The light parts are the pata bomb, and I'm feeling the bottom. That's why I like folding. This is going to be fine. You would be making a mistake if you kept mixing, especially if you're mixing on a high speed. That would be deflating. And so a lot of what you do, you're putting all this time and effort into the air getting built into here, and then if you bang it out, you've undone all your hard work. So that's why we want to be very thoughtful and very careful. I'm going to keep that on low. This is what I call go time. We are ready to go. Put this here, and instead of continuing to have this move, I am going to use the spatula to finish and make sure that the bottom and sides of the bowl are clean. Okay, let me just move this here. So I'm going to take my spatula and get what I can off of this paddle. I want to keep it moving because you really do want to get this into the oven as quickly as possible. I had water that is going in a pitcher on my stovetop, and it is hot. You can absolutely use water out of your faucet if you have really hot water. So I'm going to take this batter, and you can tell that it's kind of stuck to the edges. So I want to take my spatula, go around the edges. Yep, some of the thicker batter is just stuck a little bit to the bottom and the sides. And you can tell because it's a little bit darker color. Emulsification means there are no stripes of pata bomb. There's no difference between one ingredient we added and another. It's all combined and it's smooth. So that's what I was checking for. So this is all going to go into the pan. And when you pour into a pan, remember, I'm only going so deep, so there's going to be leftover. So I'm guesstimating. So I think we might be okay. That's why this is so imprecise. I definitely need to use a scale. I would say this is about 1 inch. This 8-inch pan might not work so bad. So there's a little bit left in here. I'm gonna carry this and you into the kitchen. Woo! That's how I stay in shape. I wanna move quickly, but on my stovetop, I have this hot water. I also have, this is a Cambro pitcher. It is NSF, which is a designation for food safety, and it can handle hot water. So this is going in here. Very hot water. Then I'm gonna move very quickly, putting this in the oven so that I can pour the hot water in there. And the hot water needs to come about halfway up the pan that has the brownie pudding in it. All right, so I want this to be in the center of the pan. I'm gonna start it, make sure not to splatter. And I wanna go halfway up the brownie pan. Halfway up like the batter. So about there. Gently slide it in, center that. This is gonna go here. I will come back and check the temperature once this has been allowed to get back to normal. I'm gonna set the timer for 10 minutes so I can come check on the temperature, and that's it. The reason I use boiling water is because if you use water that's too cold, it just takes forever for that to heat up. I don't think you get a good even transfer. If you are adding hot water, you definitely want to make sure that you've already placed that pan and then it goes into it, because you do not want to be carrying that across the room or lifting it above you if you have an oven above you or anything. And if it goes into the batter, it's going to ruin it. So there we go. So now we have to wait and we'll go check on it in 10 minutes. On Substack, you will find this chart included. This is how I think and how I encourage people to think, especially if you want to do any recipe development. This is the brownie pudding we did tonight. This is a chocolate lava cake, and this is the outrageous brownie. And on here you have baker's percentage, and wherever there is a gray box, that means that ingredient was not used for that recipe. In this recipe, we did a ribbon egg. We had butter, sucrose, cocoa powder, whole egg, all-purpose flour, vanilla bean, and framboise. In a chocolate lava cake, which is based on melted chocolate, it's not whipped. It's not an egg foam. It's an emulsification through melting fats. That is the main difference. And it also has whole egg and egg yolk. And a chocolate lava cake uses cake flour. And it has a little bit of salt in it. Now the outrageous brownie, which I absolutely love, is a brownie, and it has melted chocolate in it and unsweetened melted chocolate. So again, we're talking about melted fat matrix. The one we did tonight is egg foam with stabilizing cocoa powder and flour in it. The lava cake is meant to stay flowy on the inside and be solidified on the outside. So you bake it at a high temp to make that outside set so the inside stays flowy. Now, a really good chocolate lava cake is not underbaked. It is designed and engineered to be flowy on the center. This pudding, this brownie pudding tonight, is not meant to be flowing on the inside. We are meant to get a light, spoonable texture. And so that's what we're looking for. And then on the outrageous brownie, there's butter, sucrose, chocolate, unsweetened chocolate, whole egg, all-purpose flour, salt, baking powder, which is noticeable because you get a nice lift on the outrageous brownie, and then halfway through you bang the pan so that it deflates. And then there's 21% vanilla extract and 11% espresso powder. These numbers tell you the whole story. When you start to look at recipes that you know and you compare baker's percentage, that's the whole story. Is an ingredient incorporated? Is it being used? And if so, at what level? And then if you compare one thing you know to another thing that you know to another thing, eventually you begin to build intuition so that you know when someone says, it's like a lava cake, but it does this and that. It's like the outrageous brownie, but that is our frame of reference. All I want you to take away from is if you get my notes on Substack and you start reading through them, it is to help make a frame of reference for what this Ina Garten brownie pudding is. What is it and how do we describe it? Because it isn't a brownie, and if you've never made a ribbon egg and you're just whipping it and you think it's done and then you're whipping the heck out of everything else and wondering why it didn't come out, or why it started out okay from the oven and then it turned grainy and icky, that is why. All right, we're gonna go check on the temperature of the oven and what's going on in the oven. I would like to know. All right, let's see. So we are at a little under 350 degrees. I'm happy with that. So I'm gonna put it on for 30 minutes. It's a long time. So let me show you what I did today and why we don't wanna go too big. So this is the pan that's like 10 by 13. Look how thin it came out. I know it looks terrible because it's old. This really is best, you know, not right out of the oven, but warm and just very, so what everyone's doing online actually drives me crazy. I don't like AMSR. Ugh, I hate that. I mean, that is, ugh. But what we want to look at is that we're gonna get this nice crunch. And again, this is cold. It's been sitting in the cold. So how thick is the initial crusty part? You can see that that's the batter, and when it was still warm, it was perfect. It is really good. And I did a corner piece because I wanted to show that the corner is more solidified and cooked all the way through than the center. So let me just take off. Okay. So underneath is the pudding part. So you can see that there is a little bit of structure. So you can see, oh my word, okay. There is structure there. It's not just all liquid. It's soft, but there are some bubbles. When it came out of the oven, it tasted great. It was a good texture. It was just, it's too thin. The texture will not become more like a brownie. That is not like a brownie. I mean, it is very damp and dark and wet. It's not going to be like a brownie texture. It's spoonable. It is not lift-upable. And even now, you couldn't cut it and lift it. You would have to like spoon it out. And you don't want to serve it cold or later. If anything, you want to heat it back up. An hour is random, and you'd have to have exactly everything the same as what Ina had in her video. So you are looking for signs of doneness. And one way to know is the edges. You know, you can use a tester, and you should, you know, it should be just like a cake. When you pull it out, it shouldn't be wet. But you're not going to be able to check the interior. It's going to be damp. So what I did is I did take a spoon and cut out a little bit. That ruins the effect in terms of if you're trying to video it and everything, but I really wanted to know if it was baked all the way. I did not want to pull it out and not have it be baked. So you can do that, but you can also jiggle it. It's very obvious if the inside is raw and the outside is cooked, is if you touch it just a little bit, you can feel and see the jiggle underneath, and you'll know. And then when you cut into it, it'll just be liquid, which is not how you want it. I would make this and serve it. And you want to take the pan out of the water bath and put it on a cooling rack and give it 5 to 10 minutes to solidify, and it will not turn into a cake or a brownie. It will just settle a little bit, and then you want to serve it. And you scoop it. It's meant to be scoopable. You're going to need a spoon, and I would serve it warm. But they call this a la minuit. It really is something that people, from my research, say that is to be made and served. It's not really like make and save, which kind of stinks. If I use a metal pan versus glass pan, what should I change? First of all, I'm recommending you turn the heat up a little bit. I think it needs to be closer to 340, not 320. 325 is really low. So with the glass pan, what you're going to notice is it's going to take longer to warm up. I would use really hot water, boiling hot water as your water bath, and I would maybe start at a higher temperature, even at 350, and then after 20 minutes, maybe turn it down to 335 or something like that. Because the way glass works is it takes a while to catch up, and then once it does, it starts going like that. So you're just gonna have to keep an eye on it. How far in advance to make for a dinner? So if you were, okay, so obviously it's kind of time consuming to make. I would not make it ahead. I would make it right before dinner or right before you're gonna sit down. It's gonna be a nuisance. If you are going to make it, this would be I'm guessing, for dinner, I'm thinking if I had people, I would want it to go in the oven. It's such a pain. You have to watch it and stuff. It's not easy. I don't like things that you have to watch, like I said, you know, like you want to be doing other things and having a good time. I would make it thicker. I would make a thicker one. I would get it done, and it's going to hold up, but you're going to have issues. So if you can get it in right as you sit down to eat, that's great. You're going to have to get up to take it out. And If you do it right when dinner's done, that way everyone can be digesting, but I would serve it within 30 minutes of it being baked. That is my advice. That's just my opinion. I can't prove it. This is only the third time I've baked it. My best tips for a ribbon egg are make sure your eggs are room temperature and nice and warm. Keep the bowl warm and go a long time. This isn't gonna happen in 2 or 3 minutes. It could take 10 minutes, it could take 12. There is no such thing as like, I can tell you how long something's going to take. You're going to have to take its temperature, you're going to have to look, and you're going to have to assess. You have to have skin in the game to know where you're headed with baking. And this is pastry. This is where baking becomes pastry. Baking is making a brownie. Melt the butter, stir it all together, throw it in a pan, and it's good. But this is much more tedious. There's a lot of thought put into it. There's a lot of understanding the ingredients, and it starts to make sense when you start to go to, how baking works, or even Googling, what are these solid contents in an ingredient? What is the moisture content in an ingredient? Does it have protein? What are the sugars? What kind of sugars? The more you learn about each individual ingredient, the more you build knowledge over time. You cannot just add chocolate chips or chocolate to this recipe. It won't work. It's not how it works. It's not a brownie with melted chocolate that's gonna re-solidify and firm. This is all based on an egg foam that gives you air, but then it's based on not like a cake where it bakes pretty quick, and those proteins and starches and everything you can see the crumb. This doesn't have a crumb. This is based on the proteins in the eggs cooking very, very slowly. And one way you do that is to coat all the egg proteins in sugar, which is what we did during the egg foam. That viscous, syrupy sugar coats the egg proteins, which makes them coagulate slower, kind of protects them from the heat. And then you have your water bath and all these things that slow the coagulation. It's kind of like cooking an egg really slowly and cooking one really fast. You cook an egg really, really fast, it gets rubbery and tough and strong very quickly. And if you cook it really slowly, it stays nice and tender. That's because you gave all those proteins time to absorb a little moisture, to unravel, to do their thing. They're happy. Why is it we use melted butter for the pudding instead of softened? There's a huge difference between taking soft whole butter and creaming it and using melted butter. We aren't even creaming the fat. We're doing the egg and sugar, egg foam, getting air, and when we go to add the melted butter and we're emulsifying, when you emulsify, what you need to remember is if you start out with things that are more similar, they will emulsify. If you try taking even the softest regular butter and mixing it into this delicate egg foam, especially after you've added the flour and all that, it would chunk up. It would not emulsify. Emulsifying things is getting two things that are different to go together, but in order to facilitate, they have to be closer in texture and temperature. So we melt the butter and we make sure it's not too hot so that when they go together, they emulsify quickly and without too much agitation, and so we get a nice glossy batter which goes into the oven. That's why we slowly stream the butter in, yes. So when you emulsify, remember, trying to get two things that don't like each other to like each other. And so the more alike they get, warm one up, lighten it up a little bit, make it liquidy because this one's aerated and it's a nice room. And they just they do this. And at first they're kind of like, you can see them slosh a little and then they come together. But if they're very vastly, you won't. And that's when you will end up with curdled, coagulated messes. There's really nothing you can do. So yeah, time, temperature, and moisture. It's the whole game. All right, well, let's go see what's going on. Let's see what's going on here. We have 4 minutes to go, but I'm gonna touch it. Yeah, it's still very jiggly. I'm around 350 degrees, and I'm gonna leave it there. And I'm gonna change the timer. We have 4 minutes left. I'm gonna do 12. It seems excessive, but it was really, really jiggly. I prefer the whisk attachment. That's what I would use. So if I made it without, I'm testing it and I was getting nervous, I wanted to make sure I had a good baseline for you guys. So I used the paddle because that's what Ina used, but I prefer a whisk. That is what should be used when you're doing an egg foam. The chocolate chips went from about $7 to $12. I know, mine are like $12.99, as if butter and flour and all the other things aren't. That is why I'm so adamant about helping people make informed decisions and do good work, because we do not want to be throwing this stuff in the garbage. I mean, yesterday when I made this brownie pudding, it wasn't great. It was all runny and it went in the compost. I mean, that is like a crime. There is no time that I can ever tell you of how long anything takes. Every single person is going to have a different time on this brownie pudding. That is a fact based on your oven, the temperature, the type of water bath you're using and temperature of the water you add to it, the type of pan that you are using, and just a lot of factors. So I don't know. I just reset it for 12. So that'll bring us to 10. When the thing goes off, I'll be around 35 minutes. But when it's done, it's done. And so we look for signs of doneness, not time. Timer does not tell us when it's done. The texture of the brownie pudding will tell us when it's done. And so you have to know what you're looking for. So I'm not going to be pulling the pan out, but I'm going to be touching it pretty quickly. All right, so we're getting there. But I can tell the inside's still too jiggly. I'm going to give it another 10 minutes. And this is a guess. I could be wrong. Ina teaches, okay, she didn't teach. Ina presented this recipe, first of all, like it was quick and easy, and just put it in the pan, and you bake it, and it's 1 hour, and it's done, and voila, okay? What I'm saying to you is, if you try it that way and it does not work, do not be mad or frustrated at yourself. You have to understand that almost every recipe in the world has variations based on things that the recipe developer cannot control. Your ingredients, because everyone's got different ingredients all over the world. They're all different water amounts, different everything. You've got your own oven, your own equipment, your own skills. Maybe you just whipped it a little bit and you didn't really do an egg foam. So know that no matter what, you can't just grab a recipe and bang it out. You have to have some skin in the game. You have to read the recipe, you have to think about it, you have to have an approach, and you have to take your time. Baking is not something you just throw together. Did Ina also do 350? No, she did 325. I thought that was way too low, so I upped mine. Ideally, what I like to do is really dial a recipe in, and then I like to present it. What I am showing you tonight is in progress. These are my thoughts. This is what I've experienced. I made it twice, yesterday and today, and I'm making it now. Today's was better than yesterday's, and this will probably be better than today's. If you're making it for the first time and it works out, great. And again, a lot of people think it worked when maybe subjectively other people would say it didn't. So if you think it worked and you think it tasted great, that's wonderful. Then you've reached your desired outcome. But there is, according to my notes and according to my research, you will be looking for signs of doneness. So the perimeter is set. The tester comes out clean only around the edge, around the perimeter. And the center jiggles like a soft custard, not like a liquid, not a liquid. And then it continues to cool as it sets. It thickens rather than firms, and you spoon it warm or room temperature, and you serve it with something cold like ice cream. Do not refrigerate. That will change the texture and dull and make it dense. Is there a similar recipe that is not so fickle? Well, like I said, I love a chocolate lava cake and I love the outrageous brownie, but they're similar, but totally different texture. I just don't, I don't, it's not a souffle, and it's not anything. I don't know. It's just not my favorite. I mean, I don't like foam either. You go to a fancy restaurant and there's foam. I don't like foam. Don't put foam on my food. It's gross. I think foam is what cats spit up, and like people foam at the mouth when they're sick. I don't like foam on my dessert or in my food. So that's just a textural thing, and I don't think I love the texture. I don't know. All right, so what I'm gonna do, it feels kind of firm, is I'm gonna take a spoon and I'm gonna check it out. I would rather know, and in testing if it's done, I'm gonna crack through what I'm looking for. Okay, so this is too liquid, you see that? Put that back on there and it's gonna stay in. Still good. Yeah, it's not baked enough. So I am gonna give this, I'm giving it 12 minutes. I made it a lot thicker than the one I did today. So it's not as much about how big is your pan, it's about how thick is your batter. It's more of a pudding, and that's not solid, although I can see it's getting there. Sugar is one of those things that if you mess with it, it changes the texture drastically. Now, one way you can offset sweet is with salt. You could add salt to it. I would take out the vanilla. That can sometimes soften and make things seem sweeter. No, it's gonna be what it is. You know, it's weird because a lot of people have said it's really sweet. And I just, maybe I'm getting, I don't think it's like super, super sweet. I don't think it's too sweet. It's a brownie. It is sweet. I don't think it's too sweet. I really don't. I think it's kind of balanced, to be honest. It's not like a souffle. A souffle has that cake-like structure. This has so little flour that it doesn't have that open crumb and that structure. This is really wet, lifted, softened pudding. It really is. Yep, I mean, again, if I could rush this, I would, but I can't. So you have to be patient. You have to be patient on the egg foam and patient on the bake. So if you go to the POP Baking Club on the Practice of Pastry YouTube, you scroll down on that playlist, you will find chocolate lava cake, outrageous brownie. All right, this is huge, okay? Ina has a long history of using extra large eggs. Most recipes call for large. You know I don't play that game. I scale eggs, but typically I say an egg is 50 grams. In this case, a lot of people have reported that instead of 4 extra large, they have large, so they do 5 large to compensate. I will tell you right now, my research tells me that if you are going to make this and you are not going to scale, that you are better off sticking with the 4 large eggs than adding another egg, because it's so vast and such a large percentage that you are going to throw off the moisture and the protein a lot, drastically. So if you have to choose and you are cracking straight from the container, large eggs, just do 4. Don't go up to 5. When you get ready to test something, research it first. Go to How Baking Works. Today, I spent a good deal of time reading through the Suez, all of which I've read before, but it's so good to go back to the chapters on egg foams and bain-maries and things, and to think and look at each recipe. I mean, if I told you that on this one recipe I have spent now, not including tonight, I've worked on this for 20 to 20, if I had to bill anybody for my time, it'd be 20, 24 hours. I've worked on it a lot. And this is all I know. So to think that people are just naturally good at baking, or it's just not true. So my oven's set at 335, but it looks like it's about 340. I'm gonna crunch through the top, and it's still a little too liquidy. I'm gonna give it, you know what, it's actually pretty good. I don't know if I should give it 8 or 10 minutes. I'm gonna do 8, and then we'll be done. When it cools, it's going to thicken. So your baking temperatures are going to be 1,000% contingent on the oven temperature being too high or too low, the thickness of your batter, the type of pan that you're using. When Ina says that 1 hour time frame, that's in her perfect ceramic, 1 inch high, 9 by 12 or 13, she said. Texture is the sign of doneness, not the clock. Texture is the final judge. And so when you use a bain-marie, I mean, the maximum limit is boiling, and it kind of never reaches that temperature. So it really does slow things down. Desired outcome: stable, delicate foam provides lift, lightness, and tenderness. It should be smooth, glossy, elastic, not too dry, not spongy. When you're doing your egg foam, confusing thick with done and stopping too early could give you dense results. So you don't want to over whip because you're just chasing elasticity and kind of undoing good work. So you want this to be spoonable, not liquid. It should tremble on the inside, not ooze or pour. The edges should be set, spoonable, and cake-like. And the center should be fluid, glossy, and custard adjacent, meant to remain unset. You have lift, which is a foam expansion, not leavening, and it's texture driven, which is from a controlled heat of the sucrose and the eggs. So as it cools, the egg is going to continue to set. The texture becomes thicker, not firmer. Thicker, not firmer. Softness is protein dependent, and firming is achieved through cooking, not cooling. So you want it to be firm enough when you cook it. You're not going to take it out and it's going to get firmer. So that's why I'm leaving it in there and being patient. So the notes are going to be really helpful because whatever questions you have, comparing it to other things will really help you. This is my process. This goes on all day long. All right, so let's see. I'm going to cut into, it's going to be good, I can tell. It's still a little runny. I'm going to need 10 more minutes. It's not ready. And that's the thing. I'm one of those people that you can't make me do something. I would love to take that out and just say, oh, it could and it should and it whatever. And it's getting late, but I would rather wait 10 minutes and have it be good. That's just my personality. So we'll be done soon. All we have to do is bring this thing out of the oven, give it a second, then we'll be able to spoon it up. So it'll go fast once we're done. No matter how much you make, whatever size vessel you're going to use and whatever, it's gonna take a little experimentation. I don't think this is a one-off, and if you get lucky, that's great, but I don't think you will. Good outcome is a lot of test bakes. What you should be seeing when people, okay, so first of all, a lot of videos are just like, more like food styling, and they make the video and then you don't really know how it turned out. There are times when I have made it look like something worked when it kind of didn't. So I can only imagine what other people are doing, you know, in terms of presenting video, you know, evidence of what's going on. But if you were to make that's why I say recipe development is very time consuming. If I were to recipe develop this, I wanted it to work for 90% to 99% of the people who attempted it, I would dial in a lot of factors and have a lot of instruction or whatever. It would have to, I would need a lot more information than I have. So what you're getting from me is an overview of information, my assessment of the recipe, and things for you to look out for. But it is by no means a one and done, and every single recipe is like this. Just because you don't see the 20 batches somebody made before they posted a video, if they even did that, I mean, recipes that are really, really good have been made hundreds of times, thousands of times. And when someone says they work, it's because they work, no matter the skill of the baker, because they've been made 10,000 or more times. So that's why we know. Baking is not like cooking. You can't reduce, you can't add, you can't change, you can't fix. It's hard, very hard. This could be it. Let me take my thermometer with me. All right, let's see. I mean, it's coming out. We're gonna take it out, but let me see. 95, 96, 199. Okay, so around 200. So I am going to carry this into the other room. All right, put that there, and I'm going to take the insert out right now. Move this out of the way. So yes, I banged into the inside. I did. So I'm going to take a little bit out now, and then we'll take some more out in a moment to compare. And I will take out some from the center and then some from the corner. This is the corner. See, it's jiggly but not runny. And it's right out of the oven. So we'll put that there. I like the crust, always have. We're going to leave this to cool for just a second. Okay. So you can see how shiny it is and how there are no air holes. It's like pudding, but it's not runny like a lava cake. I just don't think it's that sweet. I really don't. I'm wondering why. I mean, it's cocoa. Yes, it is high in sugar. I don't think it's that sweet. And then, let me take, this is, I think the crust is why people like it so much. The crust is pretty thick, look at it, and there's air. So what happens is, without that sugar, you see how it's like soft underneath and then crunchy on top? So when you get a shiny, crackly crust like you have here that makes that loud noise, that snaps like this, it's sugar. I don't think it's too sweet at all. That's so weird. The sugar, when it gets into the foam, as it cooks, it like kind of comes to the top and it evaporates, and there's evaporation, and what's left behind are these sugar crystals, and that's what makes it crunchy. So you kind of need the sugar. It is a high percentage, but maybe, I don't know why people think it's too sweet. So it's pudding. I would put it into like a bowl. Definitely serve it with something cold. Honestly, I don't think it's too sweet. I think it's rich. That is interesting. All right, we'll give it a minute or so, and then I will do another scoop. It needs 2 big scoops of ice cream. I like it. This is not something I would make for a group. I wouldn't. I'd rather have the chocolate lava cake. I'd rather have Cafe Annie's. I'd rather have the Rose Levy Barenbaum, the sponge cake with the wicked ganache. It's a lot of work for and I could dial it in and know that I could pop it, but are you gonna be doing a ribbon egg while your guests are here and you're like, I don't know. Yeah, it is. It's super rich. I don't know. And I will tell you right now, I honestly have never known why some of my videos do really well. I don't follow the trends. I follow my curiosity. I don't know what makes something viral, but I can tell you this is not as easy as it looks. I don't know. I don't know. It's good. It's fine. I don't know what to say. I had fun making it. Everything is a learning experience and everything is fun to do. But I am very specific about something really has to match some idea I have in order to be something I make for other people. Let's see if I can scoop this way you guys can look. There we go. All right. So you can tell it's very wet. I don't know if you can tell it's not liquid, but what people are doing is, you know, this crackly, yep, it's crackly. And then you scoop some up. It looks like pudding, wet, hot pudding. Maybe it's just not my texture. And you crunch it around, you do this. I think people are just like the noises, I don't know. Steaming hot pudding, it's hot pudding. I mean, it's got air, you can see the air. It could be maybe a little bit more set around the edges. But this is what, do you see the air bubbles? They dissipate like immediately. So if somebody served this to me, I would like it. I definitely want to eat it with ice cream, and I would eat it out of the pan. I mean, it's really good. It is really good. I mean, I like it. I would make it. Yeah, the crust is really good. My favorite brownie recipe is the outrageous brownie by far. It's always been my favorite, and it won the Experiment Extravaganza. I mean, it holds up. You just don't want it to be runny. That's the pudding.
You're supposed to eat it hot or warm?
Yeah, I think it should be warm. Yeah, fresh raspberries would be a great idea. A raspberry puree. I mean, that is how I serve. You know, like I said, I would give this a lot of thought and I would dial it in. And if I were presenting this as my recipe and like whatever, it isn't done. For me, I like contrasting textures too. I didn't want to buy ice cream because we don't need it. Let me do one more scoop here. All right, so you can see it's a mess, but the pudding should not be runny. It should not be liquidy. And when you cut into it like that, I'm gonna lift it up so you can see, right? There, do you see the bubbles? So it will solidify and thicken up as it sits there. I would serve it maybe 10 minutes after it comes out of the oven. That's it. That is our evening together. Woo! I mean, it's really good. I would eat it warm. I definitely think putting it in ramekins, and if you made a big pile of it, it'd be fun to just eat it right out of the pan. What do you think of it?
It's very moist.
Yeah, it's wet.
I like the crunchy part.
Me too.
With some of the moist.
Maybe I just like to be able to, I like dense, I don't know.
It's more pudding than
welcome.
brownie.
It's pudding, it's warm pudding. You want more?
Sure. Plate me.
No, you can do it. It's not even that hot. I knew it was gonna be dicey. I knew it was gonna be interesting. It's not even that thick is the thing.
I like the crunchy
It
part.
goes as long
The
as it
crust is
goes.
really good.
Don't take it out before it's done or you will regret it. And watch a lot of the fails because you can see what are they baking it in, how are they baking it, what do they say, it can teach you what not to do. 81 minutes, yes, that sounds about right. They're right. 81 minutes sounds exactly right. Thank you. I wish everybody well. Take care.